Welcome back to Tiny Shifts. I am your host, Andy Nunn. Now, this is a podcast about how the mind works and how small changes in perceptions can lead to better outcomes or better decisions. Each episode, my goal here is to break down an idea from psychology, neuroscience, magic, through life experience, and turn it into, practical ways that you can, or tools that you can use straight away. So this isn't, if you've come here for, some motivation and some hype, you're in the wrong place. This is tools that are going to be tough. They're going to challenge your thinking. It's all about helping you think clearly. And my sort of goal here is to help you get out of your own way. And this episode is following on from the first episode about habits. And obviously in the new year, I thought this would be a perfect topic to get started. But in this episode, we're going to be looking at fear-based habits, or procrastination, we should call it, and what's really happening in your brain when you don't do things that you know that you should be doing. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to give you one small shift or one practical tool that I use that can hopefully change that and change your relationship with procrastination. And it's called the GO method. Now, I think it's a good time to sort of define what procrastination is, just so we understand what it is and what it isn't. So the action of delaying or postponing something, and this is often a task that you need to do, but this is often despite having negative consequences. Essentially, it's about resistance. It's this fear response, and procrastination is our way to relieve ourselves from this. It becomes a habit. But let me make something very clear. What procrastination isn't, and this is something that we often tie with procrastination. We often make a joke of it. We call the person lazy. Now, often the person who is procrastinating is far from lazy. They often do something in its place that's often harder. They have a task that they know they should be doing. They know they should be writing an assignment or doing something creative. And instead they decide to organize the whole kitchen, organize their life, or plan for the future, or, something that requires a lot of effort, but it makes them feel productive, and it's about avoiding that task. It's also not a character flaw. And this is an important thing to sort of recognize, because someone who experiences procrastination quite a lot can often feel shame. They feel frustration, they feel anger. So let's go through some sort of examples of procrastination and, why we do it. So often people, when you look at procrastination advice, they will tell you it's a scheduling issue. All you need is that next to-do list. You need to find a good time management system. That's what you need. Procrastination will go away. But the truth is, it's usually an emotional one. We're avoiding discomfort. That's what the research shows us. It shows that it's emotional regulation. It's the inability to control our moods. You're procrastinating because the task threatens something about your identity. If you think about it, it could be your self-image, your sense of control, the fear of doing something badly, how you would look if you failed, your fear of what it might lead to. And I know in the moment you're not thinking about those things, but that's what the feeling is you're getting. The lack of control and uncertainty about the task at hand, or how much it matters to you unconsciously. It's too much and you must relieve it. So, the procrastination advice would just be giving you that productivity guilt. And all of them are like that. They're just saying, all you need is a better system. You just need to put this, it's your fault. And they put all the responsibility on the fact that it's obviously just a systems problem. And I think this is the sort of problem with James Clear's sort of approach. It is always systems, so you fall to the level of your systems. And while the book is unbelievable at sort of habit formation, I can't recommend any other book about forming habits. And I think we will go into detail of how James Clear's book explains habit formation, explains why procrastination happens. I think sometimes the book misses emotional aspect, the emotional regulation that comes into this, and how the mental health consequences that come from severe, extreme procrastination. And before I go into this, I want to clarify this. There's a difference in somebody who just doesn't want to do something, feels like it's not, it's too much hassle and just puts it off, to a chronic procrastinator. Chronic procrastinator is somebody who constantly puts off the thing that they know that they should be doing. It eats away at their identity. They lose a sense of self-efficacy, that ability that we feel that we have control over the smallest things in our life. And if you have low self-efficacy, life becomes hard. You get stuck in this perpetual loop of feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like you can't achieve the smallest tasks. And why are you not good enough? And we live in a world right now where social media perpetuates that. You look at social media and you see somebody who gets up at 6 a.m, you're told to join the 5 a.m. club and go down and go to the gym and, David Goggins yourself out of this and stop being a bitch. And we look at these people's lives and they look so perfect and they look like they're achieving so much. But we're seeing bite size of millions of people that are putting themselves out there and putting parts of their lives. We're seeing the highlight reels of people's lives, and people aren't showing you the actual struggles, the frustration. And as an adult myself who struggled with this severely, it was one of my biggest problems when it came with addiction. I used alcohol and I used that to regulate my emotions. And it wasn't until I understood this that I could make an impact and change it and realize it's not a character flaw. It's just about being human. And once I understood about my neurodivergence and the fact I had ADHD and I could work through that, it was when I had the ability to start controlling the narrative a little bit more, accepting who I am, not trying to be perfect, realizing that I was drunk on the toxic world of the toxic information of social media and looking at other people's lives. And, whether you like it or not, it's an unhealthy way to look at the world. And it causes dissatisfaction. It makes us the lens that we see the world. Our mindset sort of degrades. And it creates this inability to live the life that you want to live. And I think it's really important that I just address that before we go into it about the habit formation, because there'll be a lot of people here who severely struggle with it. And if you do have ADHD or you haven't been diagnosed or had official diagnosis, if you do have it, then this isn't a joking matter. Procrastination is a serious issue that causes a lot of hurt and a lot of shame. We often make a joke of it, but it is a very, very challenging thing. And it can make you feel your mental health can deteriorate really quickly. So I hope this podcast helps people like this who do find procrastination quite frustrating, and even if you're not somebody who's that extreme with it, you will get benefits from this, because this is something in the world we live in today that you're going to understand. We all procrastinate to some extent, but the chronic and the severe procrastinators will hopefully get a real benefit by the end of this. So let's work out why we'd procrastinate. Why would we get the habit? So this is the act of doing it, putting off, postponing a task. So think about whenever you have a task that's presented to you. Let's have an example. So let's say, imagine you're a writer, or you need to write something. You need to do this email, you need to do this task. And when the thought comes to it, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this task, or the thought. That is, if you look at James Clear, habit formation, you have the cue. So the cue is the task itself. And then you get the sort of craving. So the cue creates this negative feelings, this emotion. For me, it comes up at a sort of tension in my chest. I feel this pressure and it begins to rise. And then the thoughts will kick in. I'll start building a narrative or a story around this. I'll be like, oh God, I'm feeling stressed. This is hard. And, I'm not feeling motivated right now. And these are the typical things that people go with. And then you begin to crave to feel better. Okay. So it's just evolutionarily, we often crave to feel good, to go towards pleasure and avoid pain. What do? Well, we often look for a task. Our brain will go see our phone that's there, and it'll be like, I know what, I'll go in and do some sort of task like scrolling. And it might not be that extreme. You might not jump straight to scrolling on your phone to make yourself feel better, but that will be one example. The worst examples are when you have this, you think it's this false productivity. So rather than doing the task itself, you go, I know what, I'm going to reorganize my whole life. I'm going to put everything in alphabetical order on my shelf. I'm going to make everything look great. I'm going to do my washing. I'm going to clean the bedroom. I'm going to do something here. And it gives this false sense of productivity because it makes you feel a bit better and relieves the tension and the stress that you had about yourself. So you've got the cue, you've got the craving, and your response is to go and do that. And your reward is the relief from the tension at the beginning. So remember, to form a habit, you have a cue, you have the sort of craving and response, then you have the behavior, and then or the action, and then you get the reward at the end. So the reward here is that you no longer feel stressed about doing the task, and you feel a bit good about the fact that you did something. Now, that over time becomes a habit, becomes a real habit. When you begin to avoid the discomfort and you're like, oh no, I want to get rid of this, you become a chronic procrastinator, and it becomes part of your identity, becomes part of who you are. We were not going to go into detail to hear about, the neurodivergence involved in this, and because that does matter. It really does matter, and it makes a big impact. But we're going to talk a bit later on about the acceptance part of this. But remember, you evolved to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So this is just a natural thing that you would do, okay? But now you have a bit of understanding of why you procrastinate and why it makes sense, in terms of the habit formation. But if you think about why it becomes a habit and then what we can do, James Clear would say to form a new habit, what you need to do is you essentially need to make it easy, reduce friction. So, for instance, if you wanted to go to the gym, James Clear in Atomic Habits says we need to put our gym clothes out the night before. So when we wake up in the morning, the gym clothes are there. Yep. So it reduces that friction of having to make the decision in the morning. If you want to eat healthy for the week, to reduce friction and make it easy, batch cook a bunch of healthy meals. Get 5 meals that are just instant, or have a big batch. So you only have to put it in the oven for like a minute or microwave for a minute. And that will just reduce that friction and just make it easier for you. Now, the inverse is true. Okay. So reduce friction to making a habit. If you want to get rid of the habit of procrastination, the inverse is true. So what I mean by this, you increase the friction. So what you do for trying to eat healthy, remove all food from your house, delete the apps on your phone. And if you want to go to the gym, I guess if you want to stop being lazy, remove the TV from the living room to stop you just sitting in front of the TV. They're very extreme examples, but that's essentially it at first, how you could do it. And this works. And I use these sort of tasks. Okay. So for instance, I put my phone in the other room at night. So I don't have the phone next to my bed. And when I work, I try and put the phone on. I have an app called Freedom, which blocks the internet on it, and I can't use my phone for a period of time. Or place it in a different room down the hall. And just that little bit of friction prevents me from picking up my phone, which I know I could procrastinate on. And then on my laptop, I can put it into a sort of work mode. And this will enable me to only use the tools that I need to use, whether that's my writing documents, my website tools, but then it blocks some distracting websites. And if you want to figure out what you use as a tool on technology, don't demonize technology. It's not about getting rid of your phone here, because our phones are really important. I'm using my phone now to record this. So it's such an important tool. I use it daily. I can't use the screen time function because I might be filming and, it will say 6 hours. But what I can do, I can see the apps that I use. And one of the most important pieces of information and data that I use is on the screen time functionality. It has pickups, the amount of times you pick up your phone every day. Now, this gives you some insights onto what your habitual nature is. So when you pick up your phone, however many times you do it, it can tell you the first app that you use. First app that you use. So think about this. When you pick up the phone, what's the first thing you go to? And I think it's quite insightful, because it's hard to remember everything. Often we don't understand how much our phone is sort of distracting us, how much of our attention has been pulled away. And for my phone, over the last 6 months, it's changed dramatically. Using this data and trying to change it, I've managed to reduce the amount of time that I've got on some of my apps. So I think my average on Instagram is about 12 minutes a day this month. And then, last month, but then apps that I was using way too much was like my Gmail app. So because of my work, I'm picking up my phone to check and see if I've got emails. But the problem is I was checking them like some ridiculous, like 60 times a day, which is like 4 times now. Every 15 minutes, I'm opening up my phone and looking at it, which I don't realize I'm doing. It's such an habitual thing. My phone is there. So now I've reduced it down to 3 times a day using an app, and I use Clear Space app, and it just only allows me to open it 3 times. So I have to be intentional about my decisions, and that's just friction. Every time I open it, it delays the time it takes for the app to open to about 30 seconds. It asks me a couple of questions, whether I really need to use it. And that friction enabled me to change my behaviors over a very short period of time. My time consumption on my phone is reduced by about 50%, and I'm able to use my attention a lot better. But that's an example and a tool that you can do in order to help. But there's a thing that I believe the James Clear method of breaking a habit sort of misses, and especially when it comes to procrastination. It doesn't go into enough about the mindset involved. Like, why are we doing this? Why is it that we struggle so hard to do the things that we love? Okay. And this next bit, we're going to go into a bit more detail around about mindset. Okay. And in a future podcast, we'll go over mindfulness. It'll be either the next one or the one after. But I just want to clarify what mindset is. So, and this is, I just don't think there's enough of this in James Clear, but he was all about building systems and habit formation and breaking habits, and it makes sense. Okay. It's a great book. But the psychology behind how to break a habit is really important. And mindset is the lens in which you see the world. Okay, the lens in which you see the world. So imagine you're watching a movie. The lens is the camera lens, everything you see in. The mindset is sort of like the script that you have. Okay, the story that you tell yourself about the world. And that is built by your beliefs and then your thoughts and your actions over time. So your thoughts and your actions that you're taking every single day, the behaviors, the habits, and then your beliefs about the world, they all come together and create this mindset. And why this matters is that if you're procrastinating on a continuous basis, if you're a chronic procrastinator, that's a continuous thought and action that sort of erodes at your beliefs, and your beliefs about yourself, your identity-based beliefs will sort of change over time. And you'll start to believe that you're not good enough. Okay, you'll start to believe that you're unable to really create good habits, that you're not enough. This is just hard. You're not the type of person who can do this. And when you lose that, it's what you call low self-efficacy. So it's this, I mentioned before, it's this idea that you can't control the controllables in your life. That you're really struggling to make an impact. And, the fact that your decisions don't make an impact on your environment and your life in general. And that can erode your own identity and your own mindset. And you can begin to get a fixed mindset. Now, a fixed mindset, and now we're going into details about Carol Dweck, because Carol Dweck coined the term of growth mindset, the ability that your actions, you can learn and make a difference and change and grow. You have that ability to make a difference and basically change through learning and through trying. And a fixed mindset is that you believe you're unable to make any difference. And you can learn self-helplessness. So you can have that ability where you just sort of give up. And there's some incredible research and some terrible research that you can look at about learned self-helplessness. And it's basically, they would put some rats into water and allow them, basically rats would sort of give up and drown. And it's some pretty horrible research, but basically it shows that you can learn, you just give up. You don't even try anymore. And I feel that a lot of the literature around, well, maybe not the literature, not the research, but more of the products that come out, productivity and how to time management, and especially in work and stuff like this, is that it's all about being more disciplined. You just need to get this new piece of tech and then your life will be great. You need this new tool. You just stop being a bitch and get these streaks. And it's about, having a streak for a year, do it every single day. But the problem is with this approach, it works until it doesn't. And it leads to a lot of poor mental health. It doesn't remove the sort of fear. It doesn't remove that sort of anxiety. And if anything, it makes it worse, because once you stop and you can't do it anymore, you start to think, oh, yeah, I'm just not cut out for it. So what can you do? I guess this is an important part. We're going to go into the Go philosophy, which is the Go method. This is something I sort of devised in order to deal with this. The gap that I felt that was missing from the Atomic Habits. I was like, okay, well, what happens when, I do all of this, I put the friction in place, but I simply just go, okay, well, I'm just going to download Uber Eats again, or it becomes so overwhelming that I'm just want to relieve this feeling so much. And I want to learn this task. You just remove the VPN, or you just don't bother going to the gym. You just toss your clothes to the side. When that point comes where it's breaking point, you lose that sort of urge to take action anymore because motivation has sort of died out. What do you do? Well, this is the Go method philosophy, and it draws in 4 different areas, or a few different areas that we're going to sort of go over right now. But I want to map these out before we go into the actual method itself. So remember, mindset is the lens in which you see the world. First of all, we're going to draw from Stoicism. And I think the important thing from Stoicism I want to clarify is this, I want to draw from, is they focus a lot on controlling the controllable. So let go of what you can't control. So I mentioned previously about self-efficacy. Stoics say you don't control your outcome. So when you're trying to build self-efficacy, it's not about trying to control your outcomes or control, certain things in your life that just are completely out of your control. You can't control how someone responds to you. You can't control other people. You can't control thoughts. You can barely control your own emotions. What you can control are your own actions. Okay. You can control your responsibility and how you respond to your own thoughts and how you respond to your own emotions. That's what you can control. You can't control whether the emotion comes or not. You can't control whether, you get frustrated in a situation. Often it's out of your control. It's from a previous thing that happened to you years ago. That's the reason why you're reacting this way now. But what you can control is how you act now. Okay. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about this and how to get that control back. But I think this is really important because procrastination is often trying to control how you feel before you start to do something. You say, I need to feel good to do this. I need to feel emotional. I need to feel motivated to do this. I need to feel the right emotions. But that's not true. Okay. So focus on what you can control is going to be the key here. Then another area of mindset, the part 2 of this is existential. So it's the memento mori. So existential thinkers focus on the fact that life is limited. Oliver Berkman said you have 4,000 weeks on this earth. If you're like me, you might already be halfway through. And we have to count ourselves grateful for that. We have to count ourselves grateful that we're not on our last breath. You have an opportunity right now to make a difference. We're in the game of life, and it's up to us to make this life as interesting as possible. To realize that we're just a finite human being living on a rock. We're a monkey living on a rock, floating in space. That's the reality of this sort of situation. And to think that we can control our emotions and how we feel and we're supposed to feel good is, it's a bit unrealistic. So you have to have that ultimate radical acceptance of who you are and what we do. Memento mori is the idea that you could leave this life right now. And I had a coin I used to carry around. It's in my wallet. I'm moving house at the minute, so I don't have it on me. But it just reminds you, it's just the memento mori. It's from Ryan Holiday. And it's great. It was just a gentle reminder that I could die at any moment. And when I used to, and it sounds a bit crazy really, to be honest, but when I went full time as a performer initially, it was probably one of the most destructive times of my life. I was going through this internal sort of battle of knowing that I should be a performer, but it created it unearthed some really inner frustrations in me. I was constantly anxious, and there was a lot of procrastination going on a daily basis. I didn't know where to go. There was too many directions, I had too many ideas. And the fact I wasn't going out and meeting people and all this sort of stuff just made me feel terrible. I really began to hate myself with it. And it was really, really hard time in my life. I remember there was a point I even got a member for my mum to come over, and, I went back to therapy and I worked through this all. One of the tools that I used was Memento Mori. So I used to listen to this Sam Harris audio about the fact that we are finite human beings. We can leave this life at any moment. And I really leaned into it because it began to sort of dissolve my problems of, I was getting so worked up and these things mattered so much. And the paradox is that these problems feel so, so big, so, so big, but they actually mean nothing really on the grand scheme of things. You see that video where you zoom out from the planet and you end up seeing the little blue dot in space floating. That's just shows how insignificant we are. And these problems, yeah, they feel terrible, but they're not, they're not really. And it's not, not saying that we don't have problems that are genuinely awful, because we do, people do. But often some of these fears that I was having at the time really were made from my own mind, the lack of control. I was trying to control my own brain and it was just going all over the place and pulling in so many different directions. And, I just didn't have any awareness around my ADHD and how to sort of manage it then. I didn't even know I had it. So now it makes a lot more sense of why I would feel that way. And these tools in place really helped me. But it was a journey. It was a real journey. And then the next part I think is really important is Buddhism. So this is the mindfulness sort of aspect, that suffering comes from clinging. Okay, so I've done a lot of meditation. I've done Vipassana retreat with 10 days of silence. You sit there. It's pretty brutal, but the whole point is just being able to sit. Is equanimous mind, equanimity is just accepting things as they are. Okay. And not trying to cling to these good feelings, just allowing emotions to come and go. Okay. They are just an energy within us when you think about it. And there's a psychologist called John Bishop who has a book. He's an author. It's a really great book. It's called Unfuck Yourself, I believe. It's a great title. He uses a metaphor in that book about Michelangelo. And when he was sculpturing David, he was asked how he created it. He was once asked how he created David. And his answer was, I didn't create the sculpture. I just removed what wasn't David. Now, Bishop uses this as a metaphor for how people treat themselves. Okay. Most people think that change works like this. I need to add confidence. I need to remove fear. I need to fix what's wrong with me. I need to, get this new haircut, all this sort of stuff. But I think it's the way Bishop puts it in his metaphors is you're not broken statue that needs repairing. You're already the sculpture. Okay. So it's just about chipping away at the rock and revealing yourself. Okay, so it's not that something's missing. It's the layers of the avoidance there, the fear, the rules, the self-judgment are just getting in the way of revealing your true expression. So it's not about removing anxiety, eliminating doubt and fears. Instead, it's just letting go, okay? Letting those fears and anxiety that block you. You don't become who you want to be by waiting to feel better. I think that's a better way of putting it. You don't become who you want to be by waiting to feel better or different, okay? You reveal who you already are. Within you is already that person. It's the reason why you feel the way you do. You get these emotions, you get dissatisfied, you get frustrated, you get angry at yourself, because underneath all of that, and those actions that you're taking, the way you're responding and the path that you're on, you're just not happy with it. So I think it's about acting with fear already present. It's about choosing courage over comfort. Courage, as cliche as it sounds, courage isn't acting without fear, it's acting despite a fear. So it's about learning to live in that discomfort. And we are in right now a comfort crisis. We live in a world where we have so much access to feel better. We're trying to remove friction as much as we can with AI and social media. We've got all these things. We can be entertained endlessly. but we live in this area of dissatisfaction. We don't have that feeling of, feeling satisfied or feeling of meaning, or, what it feels like to train for something and feel satisfied at the end of it and be like, I did that despite it being hard. I did that despite it being one of the most difficult times in my life. And that's the feeling that you want. Okay. So this comfort crisis, it's about a practice. It's about habit. It's about a mindset. Okay. And this is what this Go philosophy is about. It's about creating this mindset, because you need to remember, and I think just from John Bishop, he says, and this is a quote that I love, and it reminds me of this because I used to think that I was broken. And he used to say, you are not broken. You are not a fucking chair. I know it sounds absurd, but it's true. You're just a human, okay? You're just a human who feels things, and you get to choose what you do next, okay? That's the important thing. Is it's just you're just a human expressing these emotions. So remember, you are not your thoughts, okay? You are your actions. That's what really defines you. So it's about taking responsibility, okay? Accountability, personal accountability for how you act in this world. You can't be blaming external factors in your life, okay? The only thing you can control, you can't control external factors. You can only control how you show up. So as Stoicism said, you need to focus on what you can control, okay? And if you stay stuck in action, fear is just going to get bigger. So it's about real change happens through consistent action, not just thinking about change or writing, planning for the future, all that sort of stuff. It's about acting and doing it. Okay. And this is where the Go method is going to come in a minute. Okay. So the important thing is, just to clarify, you need to embrace discomfort and uncertainty. It's the necessary part of personal change. I'm sorry. So let's go into the Go method in practice. So what is the Go method? I think I should explain. It's the method of breaking the habit of procrastination and creating the habit of getting started. So the bit that I feel that Atomic Habits was missing is, how do you still take action towards it? What about that gap, that pause between stimulus and response? What about that space in between? What do you do there? That is the important thing. How do you behave in that moment? How do you create that space? I think it's important in the first place, because some people just react. We're so stuck in our own heads. We're just responding to our environment continuously. So the Go method, step one. So you got G and O. You got G is ground yourself. So the process I use here is based on research and books that I've read. I'm not going to go into too much detail in that research right now, but essentially it's about naming it to tame it. So it's affect labeling. The research basically says that it's activation of your prefrontal cortex when you label something. So rather than saying, so I feel stressed, not I am stressed, because you're identifying with it too much. You need to have a little bit of distancing. So I feel stress, or I feel fear. I feel fear, naming that fear, naming that feeling, naming that response. And it might seem counterintuitive, but what this does is this brings your prefrontal cortex online. Your prefrontal cortex is your rational part of your brain, your right side of your brain. Okay. The other part of your brain, which is the fear response, is the amygdala. Okay. The amygdala is what comes online instantly. It's this emotional, like, oh my God, I can't do this. This is too scary. And it basically just floods your brain and you just react and want to feel better about yourself. So it's this Tim Urban's TED talk about this is brilliant. I would suggest you read that or watch that. And it talks about this example. Okay. But essentially the chimp paradox is a great book about this. It's about this inner chimp, it's just reactive and it's just impulsive. It's part of your lizard part of our brain, the amygdala. So anyway, this is just emotional, but naming it quietens down that amygdala and distancing yourself. So a bit of diffusion. And diffusion is a part of acceptance and commitment therapy. So it's a great process. It sort of allows you to live with that discomfort. You're not trying to get rid of this. You're not trying to get rid of your anxiety, get rid of your fear. So this is a process I use. I've mentioned previously that someone who has anxiety. So anxiety exists there. It comes and I have it daily, and I don't try and get rid of it. I treat anxiety as one of my superpowers because it enables me to get things done and, get up in the morning and be alert and things like this. And, but part of it is when I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's about calming this down, getting that amygdala down. And it's about the narrative that I'm saying. So I feel fear. I feel that fear. It's there. Okay. And so this is the approach that I take. There is other approaches you can take, which is like a reframing tool, which is by Alison Wood Brooks. It's got some really great research into it about reframing the words. So if you think of anxiety, I don't do this, but I'll explain it briefly. So if you've got anxiety, what happens when you're anxious? You've got cortisol levels go up, you get the stress response, and it's pretty similar, pretty much exactly the same as excitement. Okay, your physiological response. The thing that is different is the narrative, the context, the story that you are telling yourself. So if you they did a study, a lot of people, what they try and do in this situation when they're anxious, they go, I'm calm, I'm feeling calm. And it makes things worse. It makes your performance drop. It actually heightens your stress response and your outcome is a lot worse. So stop trying to calm yourself when you're in these situations. So what Alison Wood Brooks did a study where rather than saying I'm scared or I'm fearful, she would say, I'm excited and I'm getting ready for this. It was just a narrative change. And the results were incredible. People's performance actually increased dramatically compared to the calm group. So when you're in this response, think about the narrative that you're giving yourself here. Okay, what is the narrative? What is the story that you are telling yourself? So again, this is the grounding method. The process that I go through is I just say, I'm feeling fear. That's okay. I'm feeling fear and that's okay. The feeling I have is fear and that's okay. And then what I do is rather than running away from it, okay, I run towards it. Again, this is counterintuitive, but I tell myself, come on, fear, I want more of you. Okay. The reason this works, when you avoid fear or avoid discomfort, it grows. Okay. Fear lives off. It's like fire and the oxygen. It eats that away. It's the fuel to the fire. And here's some fear truths that you need to get in. And these are some I have written down and I read them because it's really important because fear can control your life if you don't allow it to. But if you use it as a compass, you can go towards it. Okay. So this is it. Fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. So if you're continually working at your goals and your habits and you're continually updating your life and trying to, be curious and learn new things and do more challenges, you're going to feel this sense of fear. This is the deal that we get as humans. Okay. This is what we are. Okay. It's a bit shit, but it's essentially who we are. And the only way to get rid of the fear is to actually go and do something about it. Go towards it. Okay. So the only way to feel better about yourself, about this fear, is to go out and do it. Do whatever it is, move towards it. Come on, fear. You're going to feel fear in an unfamiliar territory, an unfamiliar environment, something you've never done before. And I tell you what, so is everybody else. Unless you're, you know, Alex Honnold and, fear response doesn't turn online. I think they did some fMRI scanners and realized he doesn't have any fear response. Most of us aren't like that. We're going to feel fear. Okay. So all you need to remember is pushing through fear is less frightening than living the life that comes from avoiding it. So learning to realize that with fear, this is why the GO method, just to clarify, because I know I've said a lot of content with this, but it's actually really simple. The GO method is this. I feel fear. That's okay. Okay. I feel fear. That's okay. Give me more of it. Bring it on. I've got this. I feel fear. That's okay. I've got this. Bring it on. Okay. That's the G, the grounding. But it's good to have the mindset of why you're doing this and understanding and why you're saying this. Okay. That's why I wanted to be a bit clear of the steps that are involved in this. Then we could move on to the O. So remember, this GO method happens whenever you get that fear response and the resistance shows up. Okay, so you get the resistance shows up. You feel, I can't do this task. This is really hard. I'm getting scared. And you realize that you've been drawn to whatever you're going to procrastinate on. You're going to think about this and you need to pause. So it's grounding yourself. Feel your breath. Okay, feel yourself in here. Ground yourself. I feel fear. That's okay. Give me more of it. Come on, I've got this. And then the O is very simple. One small step, one small action, one tiny, tiny shift, the smallest possible action, 1 minute, okay, of task. What if I could do this task for 1 minute? Okay, one small action, whatever it is, do it. And that's the smallest part. And this is about the habit of getting started. Okay, because once you get started, you're into it now. Okay, so it's just about getting rid of that avoidance habit, that procrastination habit, replacing it with the go method habit. Okay, and it's about grounding yourself, moving towards it, getting used to this emotion, sitting with the discomfort. I feel fear. That's okay. Okay, give me more of it. I can handle this. I've got this. I'm going to do one step, one tiny step, get started and go. That's it. That is the method. And that is what's going to help you push through this. And over time, you become someone, begin to remove the habit of procrastination. You get the reward of pushing through. Okay. And this is a practice. It's not going to be easy. Okay. I didn't tell you this, did I? That it was going to be easy. But just think about what's this one tiny step I can take to get started, 1 minute, whatever it is. Okay. So I want to finish with this. You can't fix your life by gaining control. Okay. But you can change it by accepting your own limits. So I think I've clarified a few things here. A lot of time we live this life and act like something's wrong with us because we feel resistance, fear, or discomfort. We need fixing before we can move forward. We need to feel motivated before we can actually achieve our goals. But as John Bishop puts it, I want you to remember you're not broken. You're not a fucking chair, okay? You're a human being. You feel things. You hesitate. You struggle. You fail. That's not a flaw. That's the deal, okay? And this is what I'm bringing out. Failure is part of this. Failure is part of the journey. It's about picking yourself up. It's about removing that shame and realizing this is who we are. This is part of being human, okay? And this is the fun that comes of it, about being curious. But the thing is, you have to remember you have 4,000 weeks in this life, 4,000 weeks. Are you going to look back on your life and be happy with the way you chose to spend your time? The only thing that you can control is your actions and what you would put your attention to. And what are you going to choose this year? What are you going to choose to put your attention on? Okay? So the real question is, how do you make these emotions and everything go away? The real question is, am I willing to do what matters while this feeling is already here, while I feel this discomfort, while I feel the fear? Okay? Because as I've mentioned, progress doesn't come from control. It's not about a new system. Okay? It's not about a productivity hack. It comes from choosing to act when life feels uncomfortable, choosing to act despite of fear. Courage is acting despite of fear. And that's today's tiny shift.